my son's my greatest teacher. I had to learn by trial by fire. It was just this knowing thyself, and every single day, what can I do for myself so that I can do for him?
What is going on, everybody? Welcome to the BizDad podcast. Today, I'm super excited to talk to Jeremy Cortez. He was introduced to me by Hendra, who, boy, you guys, I don't remember what episode it was, should I have written down, but Hendra was an awesome episode you should go back and listen to. I'm really looking forward to digging in more with Jeremy. Pretty cool. I was amazed by all the stuff you're doing, Jeremy, and I'm really looking forward to chatting about it. A true BizDad for sure, and I can't wait to dig in a little deeper. But if you can, Jeremy, please go ahead and introduce yourself. Tell us about your family and tell us about your businesses.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me on. Again, my name is Jeremy Cortez. I have my wife, 2 boys, ages 7 and 9, or 6 and 9. What day is it? And and I live in the beautiful San Francisco Bay Area. I started my first business when I was 19, and I realized that if I was ever going to work for anybody crazy, it's going to be myself. And so after that, I never looked back. Currently, I have 2 businesses. One is a photography marketing business, and the other one is on life coaching and business coaching for parents. I like to say that I like to support parents being their best so that they can be the best for their kids.
That's awesome. Yeah, I can't wait to dig into that a little bit, because that just happens to be exactly what we do. It's speaking of the best for our kids. I've got a pop-up doll over here.
Awesome.
I warned you on the pre-call, and you saw it even right before we started this. This is a norm. My kiddos tend to come in and say hello on the podcast. So I'm more than happy to have the kids show up on the podcast.
Beautiful.
Right? So you started your first business at 19. That's interesting. Let's rewind a little bit before that and talk a little bit about your upbringing that led you to starting a business at 19. Tell me about your dad, your mom, maybe even your dad's dad, a little bit of background on who the men in your life, like the experiences that you received from the men in your life, and how that shaped you growing up.
Well, I'm Filipino, and my grandfather on my dad's side came from the Philippines. Both sides came from the Philippines when my parents were like 5 and 6 years old. So they wanted to give their kids a better opportunity at life. And so I was blessed with that decision, because now I have me and my children and my generations are going to reap the benefits of that decision. Number one, first and foremost. My parents, hardworking, great work ethic, very articulate, very knowledgeable, very sensible. My dad is always a hardworking individual. And it's quite funny, because I wrote a book back in 2017, and during that time, I was encouraging him to start his own business. And by the time the book published, he had started the business, and now he's actually doing his business full time as of today. So, 2017 till now, it's just he never thought he would be a business owner. Till today, he is now his own business owner and kind of taking control. So from being a kid till now, he's still inspiring me, because he did something that was very hard for him to do, and I couldn't be happier.
That's awesome. So what did he do as you were growing up? Because obviously we started a business now, and I think he was going to, it's a big change for him. What was he doing as you were growing up? What was his job? Well,
he was a grinder. He didn't graduate college, and he worked as soon as he was able. As when I was a kid, I just remember him working, and he had his hobbies. And whenever I needed help with anything, whether it was playing sports, I remember I've never been properly diagnosed, but I could swear that I'm dyslexic. I can remember when I was in 3rd grade and I just could not understand reading to save my life. And he and my mom, both of them, would just stay up every single night for hours trying to drill in me different ways for me to learn, trying to understand how I would learn. And that's that dedication to their child kind of just transposes to how I treat my kids now. Like, you make time. Regardless if you have a 9 to 5, or regardless if you have your own business, you just make time for the things that are most important. And I just remember them always being there, regardless of the fact that they always had to work. So that dependency, that assurance that it's like, okay, I will be okay as a child. It's like, okay, well, at the very least, if the sky falls, my kids know that I have their back and that they're taken care of.
Yeah, that's awesome. The need for us as kids and for our kids now as parents to feel supported by our parents is massive. But also being able to go out on adventures and be set free a little bit on our own. Was that something you were able to do as a kid as well? I mean, obviously you felt very supported in the sense of things. Were you able to, like I was very much a latchkey kid. I would get home from school, I would do my homework, neither of my parents were home, and then I'd be gone. Like, I'd be out with my friends, I'd be riding my bike, I put hundreds of miles on my bike a year, going all over the place. Granted, I did not grow up in like the Bay Area, which is very different than, in, let's say, upstate New York by the time I was at those ages. So, I mean, I was out in the woods all the time, having a good time. But what sort of freedoms did you have as a kid growing up?
Because I grew up as an only child, I don't think I had the amount of freedom that you had. There were definitely guardrails. But having said that, there were guardrails, and then there was free to roam about within those guardrails.
Yep.
And it's not to say that those guardrails were massive, but I think that my parents were a little bit on the protective side. And as such, I'm probably on the protective side of my kids as well. So there you go.
Yeah, that tends to happen to us. That's what I talk to people about all the time. It's one of the reasons I like to start our parents is oftentimes we'll take what we've learned from our parents and apply that to our kids, even if we don't think about it that way.
Sure.
We didn't realize it until we start saying, I didn't realize that's how my guardrails were until I just started talking about all this stuff out loud. And it's crazy to think about what how our brains work just in autopilot without us even knowing exactly what we're doing. It's fun to just kind of, for me, to sit back and kind of talk about how it works in my brain and how it's all affected my life and where I go. So I always enjoy asking about it. Well, let's go into your first business at 19. Talk to me about what that looked like. How did you build said business? What was your involvement from your parents? What was this business at 19?
So, sheepishly. Okay. I was introduced to Tony Robbins when I was 16 years old.
Ooh,
and so, yeah, I had the cassette tapes. I had the CDs. And here is the story about a guy who was a life coach at 19. And so I had these delusions of grandeur, and I said, well, if he can do it at 18, why can't I do it at 18? And so I said, okay, fine, I'm going to be a life coach. And this is during a time when no one knew what a life coach was. Mm-hmm. So I would explain things, and I'm a life coach. So are you a therapist? Are you a consultant? What is it that you actually do? And then I would have the flip side. It's like, you're 19 and you're going to tell me about life. All right, Junior, go.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, wait, Tony didn't cover this in the book, or he didn't. And then I ended up making up this whole approach. It's like, okay, well, you're 45. Has life become more complicated for you as you got older? Well, I'm here to provide the simplicity that you had when you were 19. Oh, it's like, oh, that was good. Okay, good. And so I kind of ran with that I know. I'm like, yeah, that was pre-intended. Yeah. So, I started there, but then I also realized that it's like, okay, I know very little about life, so I don't feel that I, should start here. Maybe I should see how the world works first and where I belong in the world before I go back into this. And as luck would have it, fast forward 20 plus years, I'm going back to it. And there's, I guess that there has always been this knowing. That's, how people say it's just like, you don't know what you want to be when you grow up, and yet you do know. So ever since then, it's like, there's always been this knowing about my ability to teach, my ability to simplify, and my passion just to see people. one thing that lights me up is when I see the light bulb turn on in somebody. It's like, oh, they got it. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Now I can get all the feels. And,
Nice.
Fortunately I knew that at a young age, and fortunately I'm now back in it. So that was the first business, right out the gates, knowing nothing about business. And, I would have these business cards. It was called, I was called Success in Progress. And so SIP landmarks, and I had my business cards and I would post them up on Starbucks billboards. Like, this was before internet. So like I would find these billboards and I would just post all these cards all over the place, and I just drop, and people would just call me. And I'm like, oh my God, this works.
That's awesome. How many clients did you end up getting at that age?
5, 6.
Okay. That's a win. That's big.
Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah. At $75 an hour, for a 19-year-old back in 2001 and 2, like, this was huge for me.
Yeah. That's awesome. That's phenomenal. Yeah. And what kind of lights did that turn on for you, right? If you mentioned enjoying seeing the lights and other people getting turned on, what kind of lights did that turn on in you to actually get these clients at 19 years old, $75 an hour, and kind of start to build your own little thing? Obviously you alluded to, trying to go out into the world, learn a little bit more about what's going on before continuing on with that. Obviously lit something inside of you and start working for yourself, and, the only insane person, the crazy person that you want to use to try to work for yourself. So what kind of lights turned on as you were kind of figuring all that out?
Well, just for reference, my first job was working as a store clerk when I was 15 years old. Or not a store clerk, a video store rental place. So for anybody who's under the age of 30 right now, we used to have to go to a physical store to rent movies. And so I used to be one of the clerks there. I was making $6 an hour. Mm-hmm. So from that to 75 in 3 years, it's like, okay. And I'll actually rewind even further back. My mom was actually the inspiration for me to be an entrepreneur, because she had her own businesses and I worked for her. Okay. And she would kind of introduce me to some things, and I'm like, how are you able to pay me so much money for very minimal work? And she goes, well, I have my own business, I can create my own rates. And I'm like, what? It's like, well, wait a minute. I see everyone have these 9-to-5 jobs. Wait, this doesn't make any sense to me. And so she was kind of the first introduction to entrepreneurship. Okay. And then when I was able to start my own business, I had a 401k. When I started my 401k when I was 18, well, 19, I took out my 401k and I paid the taxes of taking out your 401k at age 19. I bet it on myself and I started this business not knowing anything. And it's like, okay, well, I need to learn more, but I know I'll never go hungry. Mm-hmm. Because as long as I have breath and as long as I have the ability to communicate, I will always be able to provide value. And so it was just this aha moment where it's like, I don't need to depend on anyone else. That can be an option for me to get a 9-to-5 job should I choose to. But if this next business doesn't make it, the next one will. And like Mark Cuban says it's like, you can fail. You only need one. You only need one great idea to hit. You can have 100 of them. One of them has to hit. And I'm like, okay, I like those odds, because the only way that I can lose then is if I quit. And so I just need that one to hit, and there's no way that I'm going to stop until that one hits.
Awesome. Yeah, having that mentality at 19, you could tell that you were introduced to Tony Robbins at 16. Like, I never would have thought that way at 19. At 19 years old, I was twisting wrenches on the stealth fighter back in the day. In the Air Force doing my thing. Never once thought about saving like a 401k. Like at night, I would have never. So the military's version of that is a TSP. The government's version, I should say, is a TSP called a thrift savings plan. And I thriftily did not save into that plan. There was zero saving involved in anything I did. I had like $5 in a savings account because that was like a minimum balance to keep it open. And there was never in my brain would I have thought to do that. But I look back at wishing that I could catch. And I'm looking at that now with my kids, and my oldest is 9, right? So he's still early, but he's going to be getting paid probably this year for having a job with me. So he'll be getting his first paychecks this year. And I think to myself, boy, when I first started, I think it was at 5.05 an hour, was what I was getting paid, and I thought I was rich. I was like, dude, check me out. So when you said $6, I felt pretty crappy because I was like, I don't know, wasn't that much? I think that's the difference between living in the Bay Area and living in Central New York. So that was the inflation difference between the two of those. But if I would have ever thought at even at 5.05 an hour, what I could have been doing with that money, or learning about investing, learning about that stuff. So, how do those conversations go with your mom especially, because that's who you mentioned as far as the entrepreneurial side of the house. How do those conversations go with her that made you kind of go, okay, like 401k is definitely what I should be doing, and investing is what I should be doing. For their first generation, or your first generation born here, right? They were brought here as children. What is it they picked up on that they were able to pass to you, that you were able to start at 16 years old, listening to Tony Robbins and driving towards success?
Great question. Well, I'll say it this way. So my parents got divorced when I was in sixth grade. So what is that? 12, 11, 13, 12, 11,
somewhere around there.
Back. Yeah. And I just remember my mom, she had a full-time job. She was getting her master's and she had her own business.
Jeez.
And dealing with me.
That's probably a handful in and of itself. Yeah.
Oh my goodness. And I was a handful, like I was way too smart for my own good. Like when my parents got divorced, my parents were like, are you okay? Like, we're here to support you. You can go into therapy if you'd like. And I'm like, okay, let's go talk to a therapist. I remember talking to a therapist and they said, well, I'm confused. And I'm like, well, you're the therapist. So you tell, like, I was just like this big smart aleck. And so I was way too smart for my own good. So to put up with the child experience, like an only child with, who's very, very intellectual, who also is experiencing their parents breaking up and then living with both parents at different times and all the chaos and all the stuff that happens with that.
Mm-hmm.
Parenting this child while having to go to school, and so I say all this to say that what I learned was that anything is possible if you really want it, if it's worth it to you. And so for me, whenever I would get frustrated or feel defeated, the number one question I would ask is, do you really want this? Because you can get it. It's possible. Like, and don't tell me that you're tired because you first-handedly saw somebody do 3 full-time things and succeed in all of them. There's no excuse. And so just that resilience, and again, that awareness of how much do you really want it? Because I believe that if we all really ask that questions, and if we were all truly honest with, independent of the good opinion of other people, we would probably be making better decisions in terms of like, I don't want that much. Maybe I should just step aside. Or it's like, no, I really do want it. I need to suck it up and keep going. So just that understanding of how to process challenges, suffering, pain, fill in the blank, and being able to recommit or actually say, yeah, you are going to do it or you're not. That, and it wasn't necessarily dogmatic truth of, Jeremy, this is what you need to do. This is just based on example. There was never do as I say, not as I do. It was like, this is what I do, take it or leave it. Yeah. And so with both parents, again, divorce is not easy. And so, and I'll also say this, my parents had me when they were young. They had me when they were 20 and 21. Okay. Sure. So raising an 11 or 12-year-old who's experiencing divorce for the first time, you're in your 30s, early 30s, and then you have to refigure out life. So all of this kind of comes full circle now. That's how I'm like, oh yeah, this all makes sense. Regarding the resilience aspects, the do you really want it aspect. And this was kind of the teaching that they gave me, the real life application.
So, we've all heard horror stories about what happens to some children through a divorce. And like some kids take it the other direction, right? And say, in like, let's say in your mom's case, like you saw the resilience that she had to be able to do all these things and succeed. Other kids may look at it and be like, okay, well, now they've divorced and now she doesn't want me. She's doing all this other stuff instead of hanging out with me. What kind of conversations did you have with your mom, especially in that moment, that helped you understand that this was resilience being shown instead of like rejection being shown?
Okay. If I was ever so honest and not rewriting history,
Mm-hmm.
again, I was not the most gracious teen. I wasn't. This was, I was rebellious at best.
Mm-hmm.
And I questioned everything. And it was, again, like I said, I was a full-time job. I did not make it easy for my mother or my father. Like I did not make it easy for them. The appreciation, which comes full circle, didn't happen until I turned 18. Recently graduated. Now I'm on my own. Now I get to go to college. And it's like, wait a minute. Let's kind of like review how life kind of transpired and how my parents handled it.
Yeah.
Here is this child who doesn't understand anything. He's rebellious. They have to deal with it. And they also had to figure out their own lives. That's like respect. And so the conversations really didn't happen until I was 18 and older and till today, because, again, as you look back, you just start reflecting. It's like, wow, I thought you all had it under control. And like you guys were. And so again, we go back into like the 401k talk, and it's like, okay, well, I knew that I wanted to have money. And because I experienced bullying of not having money. And so it's sort of like, okay, well, one of my missions in life is not to have to worry about money ever again. Great. So how do I get it? Listening to Tony, talking to my parents, and my parents would say, well, this is what I know. And so where do you like, okay, start the 401k. And it's like, okay, great. So I'm going to do that. Well, you can make money in 3 ways: real estate, stocks, investing, and in business. So I try all 3. And I try all 3 for years until I turn 40. And I said, okay, well, there is one that I can fully digest wholeheartedly. But when I first started, it was just like, well, what should I do? My mom actually gave me this advice of like, find somebody who has what you want and ask them. It's like, oh, that's interesting. Okay, great. And so when it comes to relationships, when it comes to finances and careers and all this stuff, I asked everybody. I asked people who retired when they were young, and they said, oh, get into real estate. I said, okay, great. Let me get into real estate. And they said, well, no, you should get a degree. I'm like, but you got into real estate and you'd never graduated college. Why would, like, my goal is to get rich. Why would you? I don't get it. And they're like, well, I don't want to deter you. So I graduate college. It's like, don't tell your parents I told you this. And I'm like, well, wait a minute. So like I was getting all this mixed information, and I had to try one at a time, trial by fire, until I figured out my way. But that's kind of how it started.
No, I'm impressed that you started that process at 18 years old, just going out on your own, because it took me a while to kind of understand my parents and kind of understand where they were. I'm still trying to figure it out now, right? And I hope that that's actually a lifetime journey for all of us. There's examples from the movie Green Street Hooligans, which is not a parenting movie by any stretch, but there's a point there where the brother and sister are talking, and they see their dad with the sister's children, and she looks over at her brother, and it's like, he's already a better grandpa than he ever was a dad. And I think that's easy for us to say if we're not thinking about what our parents were going through when they were raising us, right? Because that's a very, I would guess, ignorant statement, right? And and I say that being someone who said that, right? Before I really started thinking about all this, because our parents, I was probably not the easiest child to deal with either. I know I wasn't the worst. Even in my family, I wasn't the worst. I'm talking to you, sir. If she's listening. So I like to harass my sister about being more of a pain than me. So that's good for me. But I know I wasn't the easiest child to deal with. But yet, growing up, it took me a long time until I was, in my 30s before I really started to figure out what my parents actually sacrificed and what they actually gave to me. So I appreciate you and applaud you for, starting that journey at 18. I wish that I would have started at that younger of an age, because I think I would have been on a much better, more healthy journey myself. It's one of the reasons I love doing this podcast is talking to other dads, because if we could start, um, if we could talk to our 20-year-old selves and have them start this process now, 25-year-old self, and first having kids, even before having kids, and start to learn some of this stuff, man, oh man, I think we can, the growth you can have in that time frame and the relationship you can have with your parents that you can now foster a lot more from because you've decided to look at what they actually sacrificed for you and how they built all this out. I'm going on a diatribe at this point, I apologize, but I am passionate about people thinking through that process of what our parents actually gave for us. Even, right, so you can have some horrendous parents. There are some really terrible parents. In my previous life, I've arrested many of those terrible parents. I actually ran a case once. It's on a tangent where a dad was dealing with a bunch of drugs. Mom was letting it all happen and ignoring it. Like, we go in and bust down the house. The SWAT team takes the house down. I go in and we start doing a search. There's a little girl sleeping in bed in the back. Drug paraphernalia all over the place. Little girl's laying on bed. Mom comes and we finally release the little girl. She's still sleeping the entire time. SWAT team takes the house down. Little girl's still sound asleep in the back. Mom comes, takes the little girl. Little girl was laying on a pillow. Underneath that pillow was a loaded pillow. No safety, no nothing. This 2-year-old girl laying on this pillow. I'm thinking to myself, the life lessons that this poor little girl had to learn at 2, like the experiences. She tested positive for cocaine at 2 years old. She tested positive for cocaine because, of course, it's all over this house, right? So I think to myself, I'm so glad I'm not that type of parent. But yet, don't think to myself, okay, what were my experiences that I learned from? I didn't have to ever go through that nonsense in my life, right? So how can I be a dad that is always present for my kids, that doesn't ever, my kids never have to worry about that sort of thing? And I think part of that is understanding where I came from. And I would like to encourage everybody to understand where they came from, which is why I am super appreciative of the fact that you started this process at 18. You're opening up that can, because to me it's exciting to think that if we can impact some other folks to think that process through at 18 as well, like how much better our relationships will be with our kids, how much better our relationships will be with our parents, even if they were horrendous parents, even if that 2-year-old girl who will probably never see her parents in real life for a long time because she's in the system, she can learn a lot about life from what her parents did and from what whoever whatever household she grows up in afterwards. Take the time to actually think about it and go through it. So, what about you? I'm excited today. It's one, this type of conversation is exactly why I started this podcast, because I want people to be encouraged by this earlier, rather than staying later, like I did. Like, I've got a much better relationship with my dad now than I ever did. We don't have a relationship. I understand so much more about who he is because I've taken the time to think about that, have those conversations, understand who he is. Um, all right, let's fast forward a little bit, unless you have any comments that you want to shut me up about. But
I might want to. It's quite interesting. I think that there is a really indiscreet byproduct and effect that comes from going through this process, because this process isn't easy.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's start there. Being able to see truth versus projection is not an easy thing, because now this gives you an actual insight into maybe I was wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe I was wrong. Ooh, that's hard to say. And if we were to start this now, as we're talking about this, I'm like, I actually have a newfound appreciation for what I've done. So thank you so much for that. But I can actually talk about a byproduct or an after effect. You go through this process of being able to see your parents the way they were. and not how you thought they should have been.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And by the same token, and by doing that, you now can show up for your kids in a more conscious way versus the reactive way, which is, well, this is how my parents did it, so this is how I'm going to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And by doing it in a more conscious way, it gives us the opportunity on the receiving end to be the parents where our kids say, I see.
Mm-hmm.
I see what you, and the acknowledgement of that. Like as I go through hard times, I actually say that my kids are my greatest teachers, because it's like, I tell them, I jokingly say this, but they have no idea how serious I am. I look at them dead in the eye and I say, I wish I could be like you when I grow up.
Yeah.
And they just have this, what? And I'm like, you'll understand when you're older. Like,
Yeah.
I want to be like you when I grow up. And invariably when I'm having a hard time, I'll go to my oldest and I'll say, what do you do when you're sad? What do you do when you're frustrated? How do you, and he just, and give me some knowledge. And I'm like, it's so simple, right? Because all of our gobbledygook and all the stories and all the ego and all the stuff, but there's just so pure essence that it's like, I have no problem being vulnerable in front of my child. And I have no problem asking for their opinion or their advice. And as such, in the event that one day they grow up and they say, why did you ask me these questions? Oh my goodness, you were figuring it out. Like, what's the saying? It's just like, as we were growing up, we were actually watching our parents grow up as well.
Mm-hmm.
So by doing this process early, we are allow ourselves to have the gift of potentially being on the receiving end from our kids at an early age.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think the amount that we can learn from our kids is ridiculous. Like,
yeah, 100%.
And I want to double back on something you said earlier. Just because responding appropriately and like instead of like, there's some my parents think, so I'm going to do it this way too. It also goes the other direction. So my parents think, so I'm never going to do anything like that. Because you want to run away from what you saw. And at the same time, when you have that self-reflection and you sit down and realize what they were learning. And I tell my kids all the time, I say probably 100 times on this podcast, is I've never been a dad to a 9-year-old before. I'm learning how to be a dad to a 9-year-old. And that's what I tell my son. It's like, I say, dude, you've never been a 9-year-old before. I've never been a dad to a 9-year-old before. So we're figuring this out together. We'll sit down and try and figure it out together. Like, I felt miserably this morning with my reactions on some of my stuff. I reacted a lot. I tried to warn them. And like, it's not, they're not in the place. So good luck, warning them and getting them in the space, right? But like I told myself, I am not in a very good mental space. Like, I've got a lot going on in my brain. I'm struggling some old school. They were excited kids going off doing their own thing. And I'm trying to teach them, and I lost my patience. I was like, it's just, you're kidding me right now, And like, I am trying to build some of these tools, and what a terrible way for me to show them how to react in a situation. Like, this is not appropriate. This isn't how you do it. So I still have yet to be able to sit down with them since then to kind of have a conversation about that. But ask them, like, I love your thought process of asking them, like, how do you respond when you're feeling out of control? Like, what is it that you do? Maybe it's the right thing, maybe it's the wrong thing, but it doesn't matter. It matters how we respond together to that conversation. Whether they're doing the right thing, I'm doing the right thing, we're both doing the wrong thing, it doesn't really matter. It matters how we have the conversation. We're open to hearing those things.
Sure.
But I love the statement that you said there, the truth versus projection. And boy, that can go across all sorts of different platforms, whether it's our ideas behind parenting, whether it's in our businesses, whether it's in our politics, whether it's in our whatever. Like, what's the truth versus what are we projecting? Where I'm going to throw that over to you and tell me, can you dive into that specific truth versus projection a bit? Tell me what your thoughts on how you built that. Like, what does that mean to you?
Okay, you got 6 hours? Okay. Truth versus projection. So what's the saying that two people can go to the same party and experience two different things? So which one is right? Projection is usually based off of our past experiences, the types of goggles that we wear on an everyday basis, whether they are conscious or subconscious. If you think that the world is blue, then you're going to see a lot more blue. If you think the world is purple, you're going to see a lot more purple. Just what it is. And so the projection of that, it can be true, but is it truth? And I believe that truth is one of those undebatable things. What is gravity? What is, like, there are certain truths where it's like, no matter how you try and skin it or how you try and PR it, what it comes down to is if you jump, you will fall down. It's just what it is. So going back to my parents, as early as a couple of years ago, I was kind of like feeling, I don't know, not loved by my dad, if you will. And I had a conversation with him about it, and I told him my side, my truth, my perspective, and then he gave me his. And at the end of it, I'm like, oh, that makes sense. Like, oh, yeah. What I had, like, how I felt may have been accurate based on the projection, but that wasn't really what was going on. That wasn't why he was doing the things that he was doing. So the truth is, he was doing this because he was looking out for me. I thought about it as, no, he doesn't care. So this is the difference. And I'll actually give you the example. So again, my parents got divorced. My dad remarries. I have two half brothers, ages 18 and 21, 22. Okay. My dad lives about an hour and a half away from me. And I live in San Francisco proper. My grandmother, his mom, lives in San Francisco, 5 to 10 minutes away. And invariably, he'll come out to see her. She's older, and I'm like, wait a minute, why didn't you call me? We could have had lunch. Why didn't you can see your grandkids and da-da-da-da-da. You don't love me. And so my story, my truth perspective was that I felt that he didn't care, that he has his new family, and that I am not important anymore. So I talked to him about it. And the truth was, he said, well, I know what it's like to raise a 9-year-old or an 8-year-old, and I know the energy it takes, and I know that you have a full-time business. And I did not want to inconvenience you by trying to make time, because I know how much energy it takes for you to try and make time for me. That makes sense. And it wasn't like him trying to cut. That was genuine. It's like, I didn't want to inconvenience you. It's like, you've got a lot on your plate. And for you to try and make time for me, that's just another thing. And you have 2 kids. One's on the spectrum. So you have no energy. You have no time. You have no energy. And so I didn't want to inconvenience you. I'm like, wow, he did this out of love, not out of a lack of love. So again, what is true? What is perspective? And the only way that we can really get to truth is by first being open to the idea that we could be wrong. Like, whatever you truly believe in, you'll never question. But this may be a terrible idea, so don't do it, because I do it, and I can guarantee you that I have more headaches than not. But I question a lot of the things that I believe. I genuinely do. And the reason why I do that is because if I look on the other side and they can convince me otherwise, how much did I really believe in it? Or if I hear the other side, I'm like, you know what? I still don't believe it. It strengthens my belief in the first thing that I thought about. So that's how I see truth versus perception. It's just this, okay, well, I know what I believe, and I'll never question it until I do. And so to get perspective on the other side, let me just step over to the other side, see what this is about, and see whether or not I still believe what I believe. And then I was just going to say, and by doing that process, I can now come up with my truth, which is, and again, it could be my truth. You can have a problem with it, and that's your right, and if you have a problem with it, that's your problem, not mine. But this is what I believe, this is what I find true, and this is how I'm going to live my life. And having those types of convictions and principles, by going through that arduous process, can really create, for lack of a better term, certainty. And that certainty is sort of like, yep, I'm going to do that. Nope, I'm not going to do that. Not going to happen. So that's how I kind of perceive truth versus perception.
The idea and we need to emphasize and overemphasize the need to make sure that we can all be open to being wrong. Because if we are so dead set in our ways, it doesn't matter what the right, like as parents, as business owners, like we are going to be wrong a lot. Like it's like, and if we're not open to that, then like there's no way we're going to be as good parents as we could be, as good as business operators as we could be. Like we're bound to be wrong in one way, shape, or form, or in all ways, shapes, and forms at one point or another, because there's just no way around it. So, because I think you could have just as easily heard that from your dad and said, "Oh, you're just saying that to make me feel better," And it's like, okay, or he could be telling you the truth, right? Or he could be really saying that, and then we can look at it and say, okay, well, how can I make sure that he knows that it's okay to give me a call when he's coming, and that he also knows that if I can't find the time, he's not insulted by me saying no, I'm not insulted by me. Like we can have this back and forth, because being open to those conversations is extremely important, and that's as two adult men who should be more than capable of being able to communicate. How much more important is it for us to do that with our kids, who they're learning how to communicate by how we communicate? So if we're communicating poorly, then we're only teaching them to communicate poorly. So, man, oh man, is it so much more important to hammer that home now, that like this communication is important. I didn't understand where you were coming from, and now I do, so I can help coach you on that. Well, you didn't see why Daddy did this, and that's why I always encourage my kids, even as exhausting as it is, ask me why all the time. If you don't understand why I'm doing something, now if you hear a voice that says, "Adam, do this now," do it, then ask me why. Not ask me why. Do it, and then ask me why. Because sometimes it might mean, because like there was one time literally he was booking it. He was just sprinting across something and having a great time doing it right into a parking lot. And I like yelled immediately, and he quickly snapped to it, literally stopped, and a car went right in front of his face. And I about crapped my pants. Like, I had no idea the car was even there. I just saw my kid running into a parking lot. I didn't say something real quickly. So again, there's times where we have to be like, this is immediately what you're doing. It's not time to ask me why. You just do it, and then you ask me why later. But that ability for us to communicate and explain those things and do all of that stuff is unbelievably important for kids. How have you been taking these lessons that you've learned, that you've taken over time? Like, you've obviously done a pretty solid job, and hopefully you're going to continue doing this, but have done a solid job of kind of analyzing what it was for you growing up, how things could have been better, where you should be going, how to communicate, how to be open to being wrong. How are you working on relaying that to your kids right now?
So I can't fully take the credit for this. So my youngest is on the spectrum. He's autistic. We got the diagnosis when he was 3. This was during pandemic started March of 2020. He got diagnosed June of 2020.
Well,
so that was fun. Yeah.
And you're in California. So
yeah. Oh yeah. So everything's locked down. We can't do anything to save our lives. And yeah, it was an interesting experience. Now, what ended up happening was, how do we learn how to parent? We learn from our parents. We learn from the models that we were privy to. Okay, so great. I grew up in the traditional sense. Don't talk back. I'm parent. I'm right. You're wrong.
Mm-hmm.
I know what bar soap tastes like. like I know what a belt buckle feels like. Yeah, it's just like I grew up in an older generation, right? Or in a different generation. Well, I parent my first son. It works. I parent my second son. It doesn't work.
Mm-hmm.
Or let me rephrase. It doesn't manipulate behavior. And so we're like, okay, well, that means I have to change in order for him to learn. I need to adjust my tactics of communication. Now, okay, there's a joke among Filipinos where we say that our conversation starts at yelling and then it just goes up in volume from there. So, so we're very loud individuals. And so whenever I am angry and I yell, I project the room. Well, that doesn't work for someone who doesn't understand.
Yeah.
And so it's like, okay, well, I have to change. Well, here's the other part to this. Every one of my triggers as a parent that was given to me by someone or another were all the things that he does.
Mm-hmm.
Don't talk back. What does he do? Don't hit, don't spit, don't throw, don't yell, don't scratch, don't da-da-da-da. Mm-hmm. And when he gets unconscious, he does all those things. And what happens to me? I react by saying, you're not supposed to do any of these things. And so throughout this process of the pandemic, I'm getting a crash course of evolution of self. Mm-hmm. And I am now trying to figure out how to communicate with a child that doesn't respond to any of my communication. I now have to be extremely mindful of my emotional state, my words, my tone, my look, even my energy. You know how it's like you can feel the tension in the room? He can feel it in another room. So it's like if I have a bad day at work, I really need to work that out before I step into the house because he'll feel it. And so, again, my son's my greatest teacher. I had to learn by trial by fire. It was just this knowing thyself, and every single day, what can I do for myself so that I can do for him? And this is actually the basis of why I got back into coaching. Because this whole premise of putting on your mask before you can help someone put on theirs is the foundation of my message in terms of parenting.
Yeah.
I would not be able to take care of my son or be able to raise him and teach him and guide him had I not taken care of myself first. Yeah. It's impossible. I'm sorry. It's not possible for me. So there was this come to Jesus moment where it's sort of like, well, I'm overweight. I don't work out. I'm not eating very well. I don't sleep very much. I don't do drugs and I don't drink, but like my vices have become eating and just binge watching TV all day because there's nothing else to do. And so slowly but surely, I started taking care of my health. I ended up finding jiu-jitsu of all things. And it's like, oh my goodness, here's this place where I can put all my force, aggression on another human being. And at this moment, I can't hurt them. Uh-huh. And that became my therapy. I go in, I put all of my strength on somebody half my size, and they would just fold the clothes that I'm wearing with me in them. Uh-huh. And it's like, and I got my release. And sure enough, the aggression, the anger, the angst, the anxiety, all that stuff is out. I now see my son, he tantrums, and I'm like, hey, buddy, what's up? Yeah. Oh, you're having a bad day? All right, come on. And so that's how I was able to communicate better, to be able to be more conscious as a parent. I had to take care of myself first in order for me to take care of my kids.
Yeah. And it makes loads of sense. And you're like the fifth person that one of the few that said it on the podcast, but I keep getting told I need to do a better job of taking care of myself. It's going to help me out a ton and where I'm at. But I always get so focused on all the other stuff that I got going on and being a dad and all this and doing all that and here and there and everywhere. And man, it's exhausting. But I do notice for sure, like I haven't been back to the gym. My back has been completely killing me for the last couple of weeks, and I haven't been back to working out. My coach at the gym sent me a message like yesterday or the day before, like, "Hey man, haven't seen you in a little bit. Where are you at?" And I was like, I was planning to go back to the gym. I think it was yesterday's when they sent me a message. My intent was to go back, but I could barely get out of bed in the morning. I was like, oh, my back is still killing me. Like, what the heck? But that would help even explain, even this morning, with my inability to communicate well as I was talking about earlier. Like, I do so much better when I get my good workout in the morning. I'm feeling good. I get that stress release out. I'm feeling better about it. It just makes everything better by taking care of yourself. And that's just the fitness side. It includes like the mental side of it. It's like then you're able to take care of yourself better mentally when you're in better shape and you're physically fit. You're doing all the stuff. So I love that you're looking at that and that you realize that through through the last couple of years. It's a difficult thing to maintain, especially when you're running a business and you're doing all the other stuff. So, what do you? I want to switch to the business a little bit. Speaking of that, so you're running business stuff, um, and you're trying to be a dad at the same time. How has what you've been learning about, like we've talked about all the stuff you're learning about as a dad, what of that have you been also applying on your business side of the house? Obviously, starting the coaching back up again, like that's one big thing. But as far as like tactics and procedures that you're doing inside of your business that are similar that you've kind of modeled after being a dad.
Okay, this is not a shameless plug-in because you asked the question. But I actually wrote a book on this. Uh-huh. So, in essence, if anyone cares, it's called Parenting a Business. If you can raise a child, you can run a business. Find it on Amazon. Enjoy. And it's nothing more than a how to start a business using parenting terms. Mm-hmm. Okay. And what ended up happening, so again, started my first business when I was 19. Didn't actually create a successful business until after I became a dad. Mm-hmm. How does that work? Well, my son comes into the world. I just start my photography business, and everything that I had accumulated in terms of knowledge for business development, I applied to parenting, from operation systems, aka diaper bags and routines, budgeting, time allocation, and time management. I started doing that more as a dad. Mm-hmm. And how you do anything is how you do everything. As I started doing it more effectively as a dad, I started doing it more effectively as a business owner. And so I talk about how if you can get your 5-year-old, and I use that age very specifically, if you can get your 5-year-old to listen to you on a semi-weekly basis, you graduated from Business Negotiations 101. Yeah. Because if you can get someone who has more leverage on you than any client will, then you can convince a client to buy your product or service. Bottom line. It's stuff like that. Like, again, the secret to scaling your business is your diaper bag. Why? It's operation systems. Why? Because when you're a first-time parent, you bring six bags that has the kitchen sink, 10 forms of formula, 15 diapers, 20, wipes, and a partridge in a pear tree. And then over time, you start predicting what's going to happen, and then you just go in with the smallest of bags because you know what's going to happen. That's operation systems. So the correlation between parenting and business is infinite. And even business owners will say, this is my baby, this is my child. Well, it acts the same way. How do you, as you teach a child to grow up, to be 18 years old and grow up on their own and have them be a positive role model in society and exist in society, so can you create a culture within your business so the business can work without you. Like, there are all these parallels between parenting and entrepreneurship, if you choose to. And so how did I do it? How did I parallel the two? I did it with everything from time management to how I communicate to how I sell. Well, Jeremy, I can't negotiate with my clients the way I do with my kid, because with my kid, I bribe them with cookies and iPad time and going out to the park. I'm like, oh, okay. So you don't bribe your clients by having a buy one, get one free. We will pay the shipping and sales tax and things that matter to them. Oh, I never thought about that. Yeah. So treat your clients like your kids. What are they motivated by? Give it to them as an incentive and watch how they buy. Yeah. Never thought about it that way. So yeah.
However, I try not to motivate my kids with too many cookies because that turns into a problem as well. But
sure, principle, in principle, not in repetition.
Of course, yeah. And no, you want to do the same sale in your business over and over again because that's going to get really old. So
correct.
The clients are going to see that through it. I think it was the My Pillow guy got sued for something like that, right? Because it was like always the buy one get two free or something like that, and they're like, "No, you're really not doing that." He got sued over that. You can't do the same thing over and over again there, um, but no, there are so many parallels because I look at it from the other direction is like if you can manage a business, you can manage your household and be a good dad. Um, and you started from the other direction saying if you can manage being a parent, you can manage a business, right? And because there are so many parallels between the two of those, and how you can operate and what you can do, and like the sales tactics and from one side to the other, and the operations and the core values and all of the stuff that goes into running a business is very similar to running a household, and managing it. The key leader engagements between the husband and the wife, and making sure that the household get managed. Just like the CEO and the COO having good conversations and how all this stuff gets ran, it's to kind of those two together. Um, what area would you say that you are struggling with the most in your business at the moment?
It's funny. You should ask. So there are three. So Tony Robbins talks about three types of business personalities. And you need all three in order to be a successful business, but you can't be all three. At most, you can be two out of the three. At best, you should be one out of the three and then have the other two in-house. The first one is the artist. This is the front-facing person who provides the value directly to the consumer. So in the analogy he uses is basketball. If you're familiar with the Golden State Warriors, go Bay Area, San Francisco. If you know who a guy named Steph Curry is, he's the artist. His art is to, dribble so fancy that people twist their ankles and then make 3-pointers from the parking lot. And the value is going to the audience or the crowd who gets to say, we won, even though we didn't do anything. You did all the work, but we paid for the ticket. And so we can say that that's the value that he provides. He provides them an excuse to feel a certain way. Second type of business personality is the manager leader. They are not directly in charge of providing the value to the consumer. They are there to manage the artist. So in this example, that would be Steve Kerr. So putting the artist in the best position he or she can be in order for the artist to do what they do best. The third is the entrepreneur in the truest sense of what an entrepreneur is. Anybody who's listening, if you just start a business, this does not necessarily make you an entrepreneur in the original context of the word. The entrepreneur's main role is to make sure that the business is profitable, period. Okay, this is Joe Lacob. Buys the Warriors back in 2010 for like $600 million and turns it into a $4 billion franchise in 10 years, right? So he brings a new stadium to San Francisco. Like Steve Kerr didn't do that, or Steph Curry didn't do that, Joe Lacob did. So why do I say all of this? Because in my business, I am the entrepreneur and I am the artist. I am struggling with the managing leading. Meaning that if I had somebody who didn't want to be front facing, who can manage my schedule, help book engagements, help create the products, do the website design, do all the social media stuff aspect, they manage me. I can make sure that the business is profitable and I can be front facing and provide value to the consumer. So that would be my short answer of the things that I'm struggling with right now.
Yeah, I love that, the concept of that, like those three different business personalities. Is that one of the things that he talks about in the, what the heck's it called? I mean, he's got the business
mastery. Oh yeah.
Business mastery. Yeah. And I don't know, for like 3 years I've been wanting to do one of the business masteries, and I've yet to do it. I need to jump on that.
I've done it 3 times.
Oh, yeah. must be good if you jumped on it 3 times. And you can find yourself one of those managers, leaders inside of those groups, and get something. What are you doing to try to find one of those people? How are you engaging with the world to find that person?
To be completely honest, I thought about this a long time ago. I shelved it, and then I looked at my business literally, not a millennial literally, but the actual term literally, like 3 days ago. And I was kind of doing a deep dive, and I realized it's like, wait a minute. Dan Sullivan wrote this book called Who Not How. It's
Love
like,
that
how do
book.
I get this done? Yeah, right. It's like not how, it's not, the question isn't how do I get this done, is who can get this done for me? And
Mhm.
so, and then piggybacking off of that is another book by Keith Ferrazzi called Never Eat Alone, which is talking about networking. So if I combine these two ideologies, then I think, okay, well, my next order of business isn't necessarily to do my own website or to do all the things that I know need to get done. I need to use my networks and find the person who loves to do this, never wants to be in front, but wants to support the face of a business, who wants to be part of something that is meaningful and aligns with their values. And I know that there's going to be a ton of money on the back end, and partner on this. So
He feels something tickle him in the back of the head, so he's gonna, tell us about it.
So in essence, I'm basically, what I'm doing now is like, okay, now that I am aware of this, my energy is going to go towards finding the person, the person who can, I know, like I need to, in order to hit a target, you need to be very, very clear on what that target looks like. So creating the job description, creating the ask, and then also the offer. And then it's like, okay, I have a very, very blessed, experience of networks, where it's sort of like if I start to ask a series of networks, I am confident that I will find somebody, if not a number of people.
That's awesome. Yeah, I guess it's serendipitous timing on me asking that, because you just kind of put in the effort to start working that. And I think the thing that I'll say there is that when we see a problem in our business, when we see a problem in our parenting, when we see a problem in what's going on with our kids, identify it, figure out what the best route is forward, and then execute on it. The problems don't get any better with time. The problems don't get any smaller with time. Like, it's just, you gotta make it happen. Your business doesn't get better by you ignoring that big problem, right? It's only going to get more discombobulated, and someone has to come in and kind of figure it all out afterwards. When you manage your leader being able to come in and say, well, you left me a whole bowl of spaghetti here, where if you can get it right before the noodles start boiling, because you know the problem is coming, then, that's where you really start to build up that traction. But so when you are running through your business stuff, when you're talking to your kids about business, well, first, how much do you talk to your kids about your business?
Whenever they ask. So I started thinking about bringing them to more of my business encounters, just so that they have more exposure to see what I do, even if it's just in the background. Yep. I pride myself on this, and this is going to be one of my core memories until I die. During the pandemic, my son's birthday, he turned 5, and he goes, so we talk about how much we made as kids, right? And he goes, he's like, Daddy, I want this Mario toy. And I said, how much is it? And he goes, $30. And I'm like, $30 as a child? It's like, oh my goodness, you must be out of your mind. I'm like, different time, different generation. Okay, fine. But then I said, you're 5. You're old enough to earn money. And and I am never going to give my kids allowance for chores. I'm not. My personal belief. So I'm like, you're going to have to earn money. And he goes, okay, how do I earn money? I'm like, oh, well, I said, well, you provide a value to someone that they're willing to pay for. And he goes, well, what can I do to provide value? And I said, man, you're asking some good questions here, buddy. And I said, well, I usually like to start with, what do I have fun doing? And I said, so I asked him, like, what do you have fun doing? And he said, I love to draw. Can I draw and have people give me money? And I'm like, I don't know. Let's find out. And so it's a Tuesday morning. People are at work. And so we just start calling people. And I give them this small script. It's like, hi, I want to earn money to buy this toy. Can I draw can I draw something for you and sell it to you? That's the script. No one's picking up their phone. And then he gets discouraged. And I'm like, do you want to take a break? He's like, no. I'm like, That's my buddy. And so we finally get his uncle on a Zoom call. He says this thing. Sure enough, his uncle says yes. And so he's like, what can I draw you? And he's like, what do you want to draw? He's like, I want to draw the Mario Brothers. Great. How much is it? And he looks at me and he goes, Daddy, how much is my toy? And I said, $30. He looks at his uncle and he says, $5. And I'm like, oh man, he's good. So
nice.
He does this and then he gets $5. Uncle Venmos me the money. I give it to him and he goes, I want to do this again. We do this with this entire family. I get so excited. I post this online. Mm-hmm. Now people and I post this on a couple of entrepreneur groups. I get people saying, my girlfriend works as a kindergarten teacher. I want to hire him. I'll pay for shipping. Can he draw our 2 cats? And so I go in and I video him drawing the 2 cats, and then he gets the money and da-da-da-da. And his goal was $30. In a week, he made $150.
That's awesome.
And so,
that's awesome.
And so there's a photo of him like counting his money, and there's another photo of him like having his toy at the end. I send it to everybody. I say, thank you so much for the support. And so I introduced them to I'm like, oh, I could do this all day, every day. Yeah. So I introduced these concepts to both my kids, in their ways, so that they understand the value of money and understand how transactions work. So I do that invariably, but if they don't ask, I don't tell. And at the same time, I'm also trying to expose them by having them with me when I do a photo shoot or when I do a consulting or whatever the case.
That's awesome. I think that just exposing our kids to that level of business understanding and thought and how money is actually made and transactions are done at the age of 5, that's phenomenal. I absolutely love it. I did not piece together. I love what you asked as well. Like, what is it that makes you happy? What is it you like doing? And then chasing something that is after that. Because then it becomes more about the thing you're doing and less about the money you're chasing, right? Because if you're enjoying it and you're able to make money doing it, there's no point in being miserable your entire life and hating what you're doing just for, trade time for money and being exhausted because you're doing stuff that you don't like doing. So pairing that together, I love it. Was that one of the first types of conversations you had there? Like, did you just happen to hit a home run the first go around, or did it take a couple of reps?
This was the first go around. It was just this.
Man, what a blessing.
Yeah. And I will say this too. I've started and failed a lot of businesses, and my observation, could be wrong, is that the number one thing that ends most businesses, it's not scandal, it's not lack of funding, it's not lack of customers, not lack of education, it's attrition. Mm-hmm. So you're going to have, and again, this is where we kind of question everything. And I question both sides to this. You have people on one side that say, do what you love and the money will come. You have people on the other side say, don't do what you love because it'll make you miserable and blah, blah, blah. I tested both theories and I concluded for myself that I have to do something that I enjoy. Mm-hmm. Because as life kicks you in the teeth, as the unfortunate events of slings and arrows of outrageous fortune, whatever that saying goes, like, things are going to happen and it's going to make you want to quit. Mm-hmm. But if you still enjoy doing the thing, you're never going to quit because you enjoy it. And the money is going to be the byproduct of it. So this is why I introduced it to him this way, where it's like, no, you start with something you enjoy because now you are just living life and you just so happen to be making money as a byproduct.
Yeah. So
that's how I approach business. It's like, well, what are you interested in? Let's start there. And,
so
and this is actually how.
Ago.
Okay. Exactly I was going to say, and this is actually how so you talked about how you went, if you can start a business, you can raise a household. And I went the other way. And the reason why I went the other way, and I wrote a book about it, was because I wanted to promote entrepreneurship to parents and saying that if you actually want to, and you've never done it before, you actually can.
Yeah.
You can. And all you have to do is start with something you enjoy because you already enjoy it. And that's kind of the secret sauce to all of it. So
Yes, I think enjoying what you're doing. I've done a bunch of different jobs at this point, and just kind of started the entrepreneurial journey over the last really 6 years or so. And it's been, to me, that's been one of the things I feel like I've been chasing is this level of enjoyment. Like it's a challenge, but I enjoy it, and it is something that's different. And I am trying to build something. I am trying to grow things. And I never had an opportunity to do that in my other jobs. So it's fun for me to be able to do that. So I think that the success rate is going to be higher because I am enjoying it for sure. And that doesn't mean, I guess, that just because you enjoy something, you're going to be successful. But if you want to be successful at something, you might as well try to be successful at something you enjoy.
Yes.
So, this first business endeavor of your oldest child was 4 years ago. He was 5, now he's 9. What does that look like over the last 4 years? So, is that the first and only endeavor at this point, or has life changed a little bit and he's added more to it?
Yeah. So I asked him after he made his 150. I said, "Did you want to keep going?" And he goes, "No, I'm good." Oh, so close. And then at the same time, invariably, again, he'll ask for things, and I'll say, "Well, can you earn?" And he'll say yes, but then he figures a workaround. So he's kind of got this clever gene, if you will. So there hasn't been a business ever since. But in the back of my mind, I just think, well, at the very least, I know he can do it because he's already done it.
Yeah.
And if we ever needed to, we can always come back to it.
And you put a challenge in front of him, and he was able to accomplish it.
Yes.
So that's good for him as well to be able to see that and lean on that, and be able to go back to that and be like, remember when you did this? How you crushed that? How you were able to get through that? We can do it again whenever you're ready, But I want to go into the concept that you talked about of not paying your kids like an allowance, that sort of thing, right? Because I think it goes right in line with what you were talking about as far as like, okay, this is how you can figure out money. And I would imagine it's going to be part of the conversation when it comes to you and says you want something else, and you're like, oh, well, you're doing money yet again. How did you come to the idea or the conclusion that you did not want to do allowance? It's just sort of.
So I will first by saying that I actually started with allowance when I was a child.
Okay.
And as I started to go through my businesses, I started seeing an underlying expectation about how money wasn't just given to me.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not going to use the word suffering, and the inconvenience of an emotion it was for me to have that type of expectation and not have it come to fruition.
Mm-hmm.
So I believe in manifestation and energy and clarity and all that good stuff, but I also believe in action. Mm-hmm. And I believe in teaching cause and effect. So, and then I also believe in setting a standard.
Mm-hmm.
So my kids love to watch their iPads, let's just say. But the standard is that the house needs to be clean before they can ever watch their iPad, mm-hmm. which invariably creates a different type of playing. Because before I set this standard, what do kids do? They play with one toy, they leave it, and they move on to the next toy. Mm-hmm. They leave it, and then they blink their eyes, and all their toys is all over the house. By setting the expectation that they know that they have to clean before they are able to enjoy other things, once they play with a thing, they are now conscious to put that thing away, mm-hmm. before they start with a new thing. And for me, this became sort of like, okay, this is a standard of living. You are not going to get rewarded. You are not going to have a monetary benefit or a monetary reward for creating a standard of living. The the byproduct of creating the standard of living is living with ease, meaning you will get the thing sooner than later. And I subscribe to, what's the book, Make Your Bed by the general, I forget his name, but I make my, I say I make my bed every day, but then now my kids make my bed because they find it so fun. I'm not doing slave like I'm like so because what I'll say is like, who wants to help me make my bed or make mommy and daddy's bed? And they're like, I do, because they're at this age where they want to participate in everything, and I'm like, well, go for it, guys. And so they help make the bed, but then what is like, I'm not going to get paid for that, or they're not going to get paid for that. And if I made my own bed, I'm not going to get paid for that, but I do get the benefit of going to a made bed when I sleep at night.
Yeah.
So I came to this conclusion about monetary benefit and then life benefit, and that these two things have to be separated from each other. Mm-hmm. And the monetary benefit that you get is going to be in direct proportion to the value you give another person, period. Because that's how the world works. And so that's how I came to that conclusion. So an allowance, it's like, yeah, I get it. But if you're capable, then why aren't you? Like, I would set very unreasonable standards for my kids. But then I also look on, like, I'll do the death scroll of social media, and I'll find a video of a 4-year-old in a village cooking, like legitimately cooking.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, my kids are capable. Yeah. I just need to set the standard. They will rise to the standard that I give them. No greater. So if I believe that they can't do this, then they can't do this, because they're going to believe it too. So raise the standard. And so again, if you're capable, like I think about Patrick Bet-David, and he's like, oh, my kids have to read 20 pages every single day since they were like 2 years old, or whatever the case. And I tell my kids, it's like, okay, well, you have to read for 10 minutes a day. I don't care what you read, but you have to read for 10 minutes a day. I don't care what you read, but you're going to read it, and then you're going to tell me about it. And what is the benefit of this? Recollection, the ability to learn, the ability to recall and remember. Yeah. My oldest had a hard time reading. I think he had my reading disorder, or whatever, because he would read something and he wouldn't be able to figure it out. I'm like, history repeats, because I remember my parents doing this with me, and now I'm doing this with him. And eventually, in 3 months' time, we do this, and now he's remembering everything. Yeah. Who knew? And I even tell him, I'm like, look, buddy, you are reading dramatically more than I ever did when I was your age. So great job. You are surpassing me, and that's all I want. I want you to surpass me and put all my greatness to shame. Go for it. Have at it. And they can only do that by first understanding what the standard is, and the standard is going to be extremely high.
Love it. And do they know that you're setting high standards? Is that a portion of the conversation? It's like, no? Okay. No. You just set them and let them kind of figure that part out.
Yes.
All right.
And then it's like, oh, this is hard. Awesome. Well, then I'm going to Alex Ramosi this. Yeah, I know exactly. I'm like, great. You want to be a big kid? Take a good whiff. This is what it feels like.
Yeah. It's not exactly the easiest thing in the world, right? But I am very similar in that sense of like the doing allowance. Like, you never standards in the house. If you're not making the standards in the house, like, just like a business, I don't give everybody bonuses just because, well, you work here, so you get a bonus. No, this is earned, and you, like, that's what it is. You know, like, you earn your paycheck, you earn your bonus, that's what it is. You know, I don't think that just because my kids cleaned up the room, they get money. And I'm not saying that I'm upset at people that do. Everybody wants their house a little bit differently. I would advise that they at least think it, right? But if that is what they think is best for their family, then go for it. But I want my kids to know that you earn your money, putting in the effort in various different ways, but you also manage your life in a way that you need to, right? And part of being in this family is managing your life in a certain way. Right? You're not going to get paid walking down the street to pick up some trash just because you saw litter in there. Like, that's just part of being a good human in this society. If somebody left some trash on the ground, pick it up and throw it away. My 5-year-old is flabbergasted that people litter. He just doesn't understand exactly why. So he's like picking up garbage and he puts it in the thing. We went camping a couple weeks ago, and these folks left their campsite and left trash all over the place. And we didn't notice it much. They were playing, and my son comes back with all his trash in his hand. Daddy, where's the trash can? These people left their litter all over the place. He's 5 years old, and he's like, "This is ridiculous," because he knows that this is just part of being a good human in society. So we clean up after ourselves. So if you're listening to this and you're one of those people like those people at that campground, pick up your daggone trash. It's part of being a human in good society. Um, but he just knows how to do that. So like, and that I think needs to be the same way in our family. You just know what it's like to be a Lamar, right? This is what we do as Lamars. I'm not paying you to do this. This is just what you do as a Lamar. Um, what I will pay you for is helping me run business things, taking care of things with the business, providing value to beyond your family. You should automatically be providing value to your family. That's what we do. But when you provide value to people outside of your family, you're going to get rewarded for that. Sometimes it's just an emotional reward, but sometimes it's a dollar value reward. So making out ways to make that happen, like drawing for your family or drawing for other people, right? And that's a good way to earn money. My kids keep reminding me, and I just said it on the last podcast, I think the last one, that I have yet to still start that vending machine business. But I've got 2 vending machines I'm looking at. We're going to be starting a business. It's going to be happening. It will happen. It's just a matter of good instructions. When are we going to have the time? So, but they want to do that. They want to go earn money. They want to go start their own little business and see what it turns into. And like even my 5-year-old, he's stoked about it. He'll probably be sad if he ever finds like an empty like Doritos in there. He finds an empty bag of Doritos. He's like he'd be sad if somebody letters his empty bag of Doritos. Uh, uh, so Jeremy, this has been an absolute pleasure hanging out. I wanted to toss it over to you and say, okay, what things have we not covered? Like we went all over the place in various different ways. But what are some things that you really wanted to address here in the podcast that we haven't been able to get to yet?
Honestly, I think that we had a great umbrella of topics. And the message is actually really simple for me. Parents, take care of yourself. Mm-hmm. If I were to share my priority list, I come first, then me and my wife, then me and my kids. That's mine. That's what I live by. And I hope that anyone who's listening can have the curiosity to actually figure out theirs. Mm-hmm. Because I can say this. Life can be so stinking fun. Yeah. If you know, like, if they always say life is a game. Here's the ultimate game that no one knows how to play except the people who know. You get to choose who the players are. You get to choose who you play with. You get to choose the rules. You get to choose the fun, the experiences, how to win, all this, and no one knows how to play this game because we're taught in school a lot of external things, but this first has to start internal. Yeah. What is it that you want? What is it that you really want? And again, this goes back to truth versus projection. Can I be wrong here? I've had many times where I'll get furious with my kids and then I'll ask the question, why did you do that? They give me a legitimate answer and I'll look at them and I said, you know what? I'm wrong. You're absolutely right. I did tell you that. I'm wrong. I'm sorry. And it's like, and as parents, again, kids learn more by what we do than what we say. Mm-hmm. So this has to start with us because no one wants to, like, we can be influencers online, but we are the ultimate influencers for our household. And it's not by what we say, but it really is by our actions. My wife the other day was looking at me and she goes, you know, Elliot talks like you. And I'm like, I know. He uses the exact same phrases as me. Yeah. It's very articulate. It's very conscious and it's used in the right context. He's like, he's talking like you. And I'm like, good. Because I don't swear in the house. I don't like the most aggressive swear word you're ever going to hear me say is mother, father. It's just what it is. I don't swear in the house. Yeah. And And as such, it's like if my kids are talking like me, I have no problem with it because there's nothing that comes out of my mouth that I don't regret saying. So, and then there are other people where it's like, oh, they said that. Oh, I say that. It's like, well, this is on you.
Yeah.
So that's my overarching message. And I think that we've kind of hit it.
Yeah. It's extremely important to be aware of your actions and what they're learning from it. And, the quicker we can become aware of that, I think the better off we're going to be. Same thing with business stuff as well. Like, we teaching our employees, are we teaching the people inside of our company to act in a certain way because of the way we do? And we need to be, understanding that the actions actually mean something. The things that you're doing actually mean something. And it's like there are some little things that you can pick up on with your kids that they're maybe doing some of these things. We just recently bought a truck that it's getting some loving work done to it. I'm loving like playing around with it, taking around with it a little bit. But I put in a larger turbo inside of this truck, and it whistles and whines really nicely, and I like it. And so I was driving the truck, and my son said something, and I was like, "Oh, I love the sound of that turbo." And he's like, "You do?" And I said, "Do you like it too?" He says, "Or do you not like it?" He goes, "No, I do." Why do you like it, Dad? Like, because like I influenced him just by saying I liked something.
Yep.
Just by saying I liked it, he was like, "Oh, I like it too." Yep, I totally do. I totally do, Dad. Yeah. Why do we like that? Why do we like that song, Dad? Because they pick up on just everything you're doing, and if you can make sure that you're doing the right things and acknowledging when you're not, and doing exactly like you just said, and saying, "Hey, dude, I was wrong. I totally made that mistake," because that is also something they're going to pick up, is being honest and being able to admit when they're wrong and make the mistake and be okay with it. And I say that out loud, knowing that I struggle with my sons to let them be okay with making mistakes, because they hate making mistakes. Especially my oldest, he hates making mistakes. No matter how I try to teach them that making mistakes is good, so long as you're learning from them. It's if you repeat the same mistake over and over again that is not great. But man, they hate it, and I'm like, I'll just keep on reiterating. It's okay. It's okay. Well, I would make mistakes. Daddy makes mistakes. I'm admitting when I'm making these mistakes. It's just a part of the process of being a dad, being a human, of being in this world. But Jeremy, I really appreciate the conversation. It was awesome being able to get to know you a little bit more, going into your story. I really look forward to this episode coming out and people digging into it and learning more about themselves, hopefully, and challenging themselves as they're going through this. But if folks want to reach out to you, if they want to get your book, if they want to learn more about you, what's the best way for folks to get hold of you?
Well, they can go to ceoparent.com, and it has all my information, anything that I'm doing now or in the past.
Reach out to Jeremy, the CEO, be in the show notes. Again, Jeremy, thank you so very much for listening. I thank you for listening. Please like, subscribe, do all that stuff. Reach out to Jeremy, as I'm sure you guys got a lot of value. I would imagine he'll bring even more value when you go more. So thank you all very much, and we will see everybody on the next episode.